Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to an all new week and all new season of the iRacing official GTE Sprint Series. The one and only series available on the official sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing, and we are back ladies and gentlemen for our second season of 2025, and what a full on season we've got lying in store full of GT racing action. We open up today with week 1 of 12 and we are here at the infamous Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium for what is expected to be a hotly contested top split round of racing action. Located near the village of Stavelot and indeed deep within the Ardennes forest, this 4.35 mile circuit is a far cry from its original layout all those years ago, dating all the way back to the pre-war years of the Second World War, where the circuit would run its best way all the way through the Ardennes forest and amount to the best part of what was over 10 miles racing distance. Well, the circuit has gradually matured over the course of its history to become the circuit that we all love and see today, consisting of 19 corners, many of them being household names from La Source all the way up through to what is Blanchimont. Is a circuit like no other, and it brings together an absolute medley of corner combinations, elevation changes and straights to create a circuit whereby every aspect of a driver and car's ability are tested from lights out to checkered flag. But as we get ready to go racing today and cover all the racing action in the 1900 GMT, that's Greenwich Mean Time or Universal Coordinate Time top split, well, we welcome you to this broadcast and what could be an absolutely hotly anticipated race here on the YouTube channel at TX141 at TX, or turn to the YouTube channel known as Paul Walsh. Speaking of which, in the content booth you have myself. I'm back for another season of Fast and Furious GT Racing. I'm your commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And in terms of what we've got on store for tonight, we've only got one race, and that is, of course, a 45-minute race due to get underway in approximately 3 minutes' time at 7:10 this evening, GMT and UTC time. And what a race we've got ahead, because we've got plenty of returning names. We've also got some huge celebrities in the GT community and some newcomers as well to boot. But let's get straight into it then, as we're not long before we do go racing. And here is our schedule for Season 2 of 2025. And as you can see there, each week we publish the date on which we're going to be bringing you the top split broadcast. Now, the date will remain as the 1900 GMT or UTC session. However, it will change because of daylight savings time here in the United Kingdom, which is where we present the broadcast from. But what you'll notice is, if we can't cover the broadcast on what will be our normal Friday slot, we will be moving to earlier in the week on the Wednesday slot, and this is due to our availability. But in terms of the rounds we've got ahead of us, we start off today in Belgium. We're going to be travelling around the world to United States of America, to circuits like Daytona in week number 2 and the Detroit Grand Prix circuit at Belle Isle in our season finale of week 12 of 12. We're also heading down under to Bathurst on Mount Panorama circuit on week number 7, and we've also got some returning favourites such as the Italian Temple of Speed, the Autodromo Nacional Monza on week number 4, and there the Algarve International circuit that, whilst it didn't have too many drivers on it in the previous weeks in season 1, for week 6 we're expecting it still to present some brilliant racing action. But coming on to our circuit for today then, is of course the Grand Prix pit lane layout of the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, located between the villages of Stavelot and Francorchamps in what is the municipality of Stavelot in the Liège region of the Wallonia state of Belgium. This circuit, as we can see, thanks to the iRacing circuit map, and indeed the circuit map is available on the iRacing.com simulator platform. Thank you to iRacing for this brilliant series, and the brilliant circuit maps are available as part of the simulator, where it's a circuit that we stapled into many in the mind. But let's not dwell on this image. Indeed, let's see all the pictures instead. We go out of the circuit, but you can see up there the infamous circuit in its glory. And in terms of our rules, because we can't go racing without them, this is an open setup series with fuel loads restricted to 50%. In terms of our race, the grid shall be set via a closed qualifying session, which is just coming towards a close at this time. The race commencing via a rolling start is the tradition of the GTE Sprint Series, and drivers shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 16 or more instant points, and if they go all the way to 25 instant points, they will be disqualified. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. We're here for the racing, and let's get back to the circuit. And well, right now, the fastest man out there at this time is none other than Jose Manuel Cazon as he makes his way on through. Now, this could be a very interesting benchmark today here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, in the fact many of you may remember in Season 1 of 2025, the car that was dominant out of the 5 machines available from the Ferrari, the BMW, the Corvette, the Porsche, and also what is the Ford, was none other than the Corvette, which you're seeing here, the Corvette C8R, as being raced by Cazon. In the fact, it's been the car that's been one of the strongest in terms of one-lap pace, but it's also been the fastest over the long race distance seemingly having better tyre life compared to its rivals. However, rumour has it we are starting to see a bit of parity emerge. Something has changed in the balance of performance between the two seasons. And coming into season 2, it's being heard that the Porsche 911 RSR, of which we do have Todd Allier here, indeed one of the big stars and celebrities of the GTE community, making his way around right now, and it is looking as though that potentially the Porsche could be stronger in the race compared to where it has been, and therefore we could see the Porsches absolutely taking the fight. But as he makes his way on through with only a minute and a half left on the qualifying clock, indeed the clock will time out 8 minutes, and that's exactly when all the drivers will be taken back to the pit lane and they'll head to the grid. Well, we've also got plenty of new names here today. Ali have been one of our regulars, but one of our new names who's currently not out in the car, and you'll see him in due course, is the big man of Ford, and indeed the celebrity of the Ford GTE machine, and that is Michael Ross. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be seeing Ross here today on the grid, and we look forward to seeing what Michael can get on with in terms of his performances, given the fact if anybody can make the Ford GTE fly, he is the one to be able to do so, and he's normally missed a setup when it comes to anyone needing a good setup in the Ford GTE machine. We've also got one of the big stars of what was season 1 in terms of the overall top 3 in the championship, and that was Sylvain Depesche, the official iRacing championship, as he makes way on through there, albeit on a cool-down lap, and it's good to see him back once again. And we've got quite a bit of car variety here today as well, it's worth noting, in the fact that we do have a couple of Fords, we've got a couple of BMWs as well, one of which being driven by Jens Loschel, as he heads across the timeline there to complete his final qualifying lap and moves to P23 on a 2:14.396. We've also got some Ferraris, including newcomer to this top split, Renzo de Groot, and well, he makes his debut here today in one of our highest strengths of field as he crosses the line there with a 3,491 I rating on average. Indeed, it is one of the highest, only beaten, I do believe, by Monza in our season finale last season. And here's Cedric Boissier, also another Ford GT driver, as he makes way down. Can he get this final qualifying lap on the board? He's only got 5 seconds. I don't think he's going to quite make it. He's just going to miss out in Cedric, and as a result, he will not get that lap on the board. But that is qualified complete, ladies and gentlemen, and well, let's see how they line up for the purposes of our one and only race today, and we'll be heading to that grid very shortly. And well, speaking of the grid, here we go then, ladies and gentlemen. This is how our drivers line up for our week 1 top split race here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. It's Jose Manuel Cazon who takes pole position, the Spaniard doing so by what was only 20 thousandths over Michael Ross. Meanwhile, starting P3 will be none other than Ruben Lorente Jr. ahead of Agustin Martin, and then we do have Oscar Rodriguez at P5 ahead of Sylvain Depesche, completing off the 3rd row. On row number 4, it's going to be Roberto Farina ahead of none other than Balta Fernandez, and then completing your top 10 will be Juan Carlos Martin and Sabit Harabovic, who we line up there for the first time in this top split broadcast. We then have on row number 6 the combination there of Jose Rodriguez GC ahead of Todd Allier, and then we have behind them on row number 7 Antonio Montero and Cedric Boissier. And then on row number 8 it'll be the combination of Axel Begerman. Keep your eyes out for the number 13 driver. He's very fast over race distance, hasn't always been the fastest in qualifying pace, it should be pointed out, but he'll be able to make some magic work, I'm sure, and he'll be in the company there of none other than Carlos Manzanaro, who'll be starting P16. P17, we're going to be going the way of what is Dirk Huppert-Rüber, and the German driver will be followed up there by the Benelux driver of what is Renzo de Groot in the Ferrari 488, and then completing a top 20 will be the combination of Artur Strozowski, and we will also see there Baptiste Morinu, who will be completing your top 20. Outside the top 20, let's not forget about them, because we've got 26 drivers on this grid here today. We're also going to be seeing what will be on row number 11, the combination there of Matthias Matthew Siegel, and also there will be Geoffrey Agarius, and then we do have on the penultimate row of the grid Felipe Salinas and Jens Loschel, and then starting your final row of the grid with no qualifying lap set, Lucas Hand and Balti Silva. Those will be your 26 drivers as they line up. So from what will be Jose Manuel Cazon all the way through to Balti Silva, 26 drivers all itching and ready to go here today at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, and we are only moments away as we will have that partial formation lap. The clock ticks over to 2 minutes in terms of their preparation time. All of our drivers are on the grid, and as they get ready to go, we do say hello there in the YouTube chat to Cactus Lord, who says, oh my god, I've been so busy, I completely forgot about this week, my favourite track to drive on. Well, Cactus, you may not be on the grid today, but I can tell you one thing, we do hope you're able to get some racing time in the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. It's never quite right if you don't get to race here at the Belgian circuit, and best luck to all the drivers. I completely agree with you, and I'm doing very well, thank you. I've missed this for the last 2 weeks, I can tell you that, and I'm absolutely itching refreshing to be back behind the microphone to see how it all plays out today for this season. And we also say hello there to Vilu, not able to race today, but very happy to have you tuned in, Vilu, as always. And if you are in the YouTube right now and you're not putting anything in the chat, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. We don't bite here on the official Top Split GTE broadcast. Well, I don't bite. The one thing that does bite is our drivers on their brake pedals. And let's get ready to see how they all get on, because it's going to feel like a bit of an eternity here as they make the way along what will be the backstretch, heading up towards Blanchimont. In the fact there is only a partial formation lap, but it is a long run there. And as we do jump on board with Axel Bergerman, as we sit inside the number 13 car for a brief moment, well, he'll be getting ready to go very soon, and he'll be thinking about what could he do from starting in what is just behind the midway point of the grid. He's got the company of Cedric Boycier and Carlos Manzanaro, and well, all rivals he'll be very keen to make a big impression on. But this is the man who we have been absolutely itching to see take to the grid this season, Michael Ross. He's finally here. We finally found a round where he's able to make it at the Top Split broadcast time, and we'll get as much tyre temperature as possibly can. Can he take on Kazan for what is the win? We'll have to see, because as we say, if anyone can get the most out of that Ford GTE, it is Michael Ross. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, behind the pace car, it is going to be to Jose Manuel Kazan to take us to Green Flag Racing. I do believe he goes immediately on the exit of the bus stop chicane. We are go already for 45 minutes of racing here in the season opener of the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. And down to the braking zone they go, and Ross having a very slow start as Agustin Martin and also what is there, Lorente Jr. both making early progress. Ross goes about deep. Oh goodness me, one car round, and that is going to be tears as the field comes charging into the scene. The instant one driver dipped a tyre wide, and I believe that's led to the whole field coming to a crashing halt before they've even cleared the first corner, and a couple more cars being picked off there. We're going to have to get a replay of what happened very shortly. But meanwhile, looking from down the bottom of the field towards the very front of the field, those have been able to avoid the major altercation, of which we have had 7 to 8 drivers all caught up in that. Well, Oscar Rodriguez and Roberto Frenina now battling hard here for P3 as they go side by side. It is going to be Rodriguez ahead in the number 20 as he goes hard on the anchors, sliding from his right, left, right for Lecom, and down they'll go very shortly in towards Raj Corner. And Will Ross just tucking in behind. Meantime, after that very slow and dismal start, I think being caught out there. As meanwhile, Wincy Delpeche looking to try and make the move on Balta Fernandez. He's going to look up the inside here. Delpeche goes all in. It's a smooth move. And the number 5 driver immediately up the inside there and taking the place with the intention of just running away with it, as Axel Bergman also making his way on past Cedric Boycier there, coming down into Ravage. And now through X they go, and as they make the way out of the corner previously known as No Name, well, now they're heading in towards Pouillon. It's all now going to be about one line of Stern Hicks. This is the one place you don't want to go too wide, although I think Argurios here has other ideas. He tries to look up the inside of Renzo de Groot, but de Groot says no and holds his position right now as they come on down and in towards the Fanja chicane. But onto the brakes they go, and it's all going to be about here balancing what is some relatively cold tyres still with those rapid fire direction changes, and our drivers do clear it with absolute aplomb. And what I can tell you, unfortunately, we have had what is 7 drivers have to auto to the pits after that huge shunt, including Silva, Lorente Jr., also Martin Veraboic. Also we do have, I believe, what was Rodriguez GC, also Alia and Mantero all get caught up in that instant, and we will get a replay of it shortly to explain what exactly happened, and we will get a replay of that race start, I think, for full context. But as our drivers make the way out towards Blanchimont, another being made here by way of Siegel, trying to look for the opportunity. Can't quite find it on Agurios and having to wait his turn. Meanwhile, Manzanaro under a bit of pressure there from the group behind. The Ferrari driver looks up the inside, takes a sneak peek, can't quite find it in the end, and just waits. But after one lap, it is Manuel Kazan who leads ahead of Agustin Martin P2. Then it's Rodriguez P3 ahead of Farina P4. Ross back on the top pack now in P5. The Ford GT driver pushing onwards after the 4th pack of Corvettes. And then we have Delpeche in P6, the leading Porsche driver ahead of Fernandez, followed by Bergerman. And there is Boycier and Manzanaro, who currently complete your top 10 as they make their out the source for the second time. And no drama this time around, but I think they're not as close to each other to cause that drama anymore as they make the way up onto the rise. But as they come through, well, Rodriguez here side by side with Farina as they head down the back straight and onwards towards what will be the braking zone for Lecom, heading on down the Kemmel Straight as it's known. And it's going to be Farina trying to make the move here, and he's going to get ahead in the yellow and red machine, and Rodriguez slides around there, absolutely snaking from left to right. And well, as they come out of Lecom and down towards Raj Corner, we jump on board with Ross, who's trying to get involved in this battle now as he looks up the inside, can't quite find it at this time. Having to wait his turn as Rodriguez goes a little bit deep, does get the car finally rotated through the corner. It's a tricky one there, Ravage, and the fact you're constantly braking through a downhill apex, and therefore you don't want to touch the throttle pedal if you can help it. But if you overstep the corner and go a little bit deep on initial entry, then all the momentum of the car just carries forward with you, and therefore it's very hard to get the car back without about to open up a door, but Ross there not quite able to get involved, and therefore having to wait once again as he chased after the Corvette drivers. Delpeche being 1.5 seconds behind. I do wonder whether we'll see the Porsche drive become a bit more of a prominent feature in this top 5 battle in the second half of the race, given the rumour is that the Porsche is maintaining its lap times a lot more strongly compared to how it did in Season 1. The Corvette's about the same in terms of performance, and then we do have the wildcards out there in the other machines all trying to mix it up. But as they come out of Stablo 1 and Stablo 2, also known as the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, and well, now Ross going on the hunt once again. You can see that lead battle opens up a little bit, and it will close back up in due course as they head through Blanchimont. But in terms of moves that are being made on this lap, nothing so far, albeit Carlos Manzanaro trying to look for the move right now on De Groot as they come out of what is the Blanchimont corner. He won't be able to get it this time, surely though, because that Ferrari's looking quite quick, although I say that Manzanaro does get a bit close here. In 1.5 tenths they head onto the anchors, and with what is Matthias Matthew Siegel just behind, they will all stay where they are as new fastest lap of the race after lap number 2. It'll be our first proper fastest lap race, 2:12.121. Meanwhile, hold the phone there, as that's Ross on the inside of Rodriguez into La Source corner, and it's going to be a drag race here between the GT on the left of your picture. He'll have the inside towards the pit wall initially, but it'll be on the outside heading in towards Rouge and Radion. In the end, he is able to get ahead, and Ross now moves ahead, but has he done this a little bit too soon? Because of the fact, of course, now they've got the Kemmel straight, and it's a drag race down this stretch all the way out towards Lake Con. Will we ride on board looking back from Ross's car? And the answer seems to be here that if Rodriguez is going to close up, he's struggling to, and I wonder whether Rodriguez has invested in a lot more downforce than Ross, and that might explain why Ross was struggling on the open lap, and the fact he's got less downforce to play with. And the rumour was down in the paddock in the build-up to today that Michael has been looking at a completely different setup philosophy on the Ford GT for this season. He's moving away from the philosophy that he's been going with previously, albeit I'm not quite privy as to what that philosophy is, but I do know a few drivers who do go with his philosophy and others who prefer a different philosophy. But one thing I can tell you, that Ross is changing up the way he's setting up the car for this season, and it seems to be paying off right now. He may have had a slow start, but he's now starting to gather pace, and Farina's the next target, only 2 tenths up the road, and you can see already how he's closing up here. And I think Ross may have gone for a setup that is more race-centric in terms of getting the performance out the car sooner rather than later, and it's showing if so. As he comes on through the Avengers chicane here, well, Farina will be a tricky target to pass. In the fact, it's one thing to catch, it's another thing to pass, as the late great Murray Walker once said, as we see a bit of sparks flying there from the undertray of Delpeche's car in the Porsche, who is closing on this battling. So Delpeche is starting to fly a little bit now. And in fact, Delpeche's pace is to the point where it's almost matching the fastest of our drivers, and that is Manuel Cazon and also Martin at the front of the field. So this could get very dicey as Delpeche starts to play a role in the battling. But will we see a move from Ross here as they're heading towards Blanchimont? Not quite, although he is 1.5 tenths back, so he could go for it into the bus stop chicane, albeit Farina at this time will be thinking about defending. No, he won't, as Ross is going to go up the inside. Farina leaves the door open. Can he make it too wide all the way through and force Ross to have to back out? Yes, he does. Ross goes for the cutback, but Farina absolutely nails it, return to the throttle, and Ross is made to stay back in P4. But this is some brilliant battling between these two, and I would imagine that as they head onwards here, onto the brakes, Ross up the inside here. It's going to be a classic move, gets the car stopped dead on the dot, and it's a move made by Michael Ross for P3 as he continues to make his way further and further up the field. But as the drivers come on through and in towards Rouge and Radion, we'll stay with this before we do get a replay of that race start and the open lap instant. Will Ross up the rise here? Now, will he be able to completely pull away like he did on Rodriguez? I don't think he's going to be able to here. I think this is going to be a bit more difficult. Ross is going to have to go defensive on the inside as they head down the Kemmel straight. And you can see already how much Ross is trying to really make that forward as wide as possible. In the end, Farina decides, you know what, I don't want to fight this because we're only losing the leaders by fighting hard. Meanwhile, Cedric Boissier trying to look for the move on Begeman, and well, put Boissier and Begeman in the same sentence, the two brilliant Bs in terms of surnames. And I'll tell you one thing, these two have had plenty of time battling each other, and they're going to do it again. As meanwhile, in the battle of Ferraris, that is Matthias Matthew Siegel moving ahead of Renzo de Groot. He's made some progress there, has Siegel, and now up into P11. But as they come on down, well, I can tell you in the pit lane, we have got what is Jose Rodriguez GC making his way out the pit lane after what has been extensive repair work done to the car after that huge shunt for multiple drivers. And once the drivers make the way on around now, well, things do calm down for a brief moment, or do they? As that is Sylvain Delpeche looking for a potential move here on what will be Oscar Rodriguez, who's getting very close as they come in towards the Fantasy chicane. Medium speed apex is right and left. As they settle the cars down here, well, now the tyres are fully up to temperature, and now it's all about burning the fuel out of the car, albeit you will need some fuel to get yourself to that pit stop, and of course you want to try and minimise how long you are stationary in the pits, but the point being here, these cars will feel very lively now, and that is only going to add to the thrill of what is these drivers chasing each other as much as possible and looking for an upper hand, but we'll have to wait to see just how long the Corvette is able to last versus the Porsche here, and whether the two drivers will be swapping stories a little bit later on. But meanwhile, coming a little bit further into the foreground of the picture, Ross still not able to break away from Farina, so Roberto Farina not as easy to break away from compared to Rodriguez for Ross, and Ross onto the brakes here, but Farina just watching from behind. Leaders right now being 2.5 seconds up the road, so Agustin Martin being the next driver for Ross to try and take on, and well, Farina's not going to let him go, and I think it's smart play here, which is the enemy of my enemy is my friend, as the old saying goes, and therefore Farina's thinking, so long as Ross is delivering the lap times, there's no point me fighting him, he's going to pull me closer, and that is very true in the fact that despite the distance of between P2 and P3 increasing as a result of that battling on what was the previous lap, the lap time average is now starting to level out between Ross and Martin after a couple of laps, and therefore we could expect that if Ross is given some breathing room here and it's not made to fight and nails this lap, we could expect him to start to match Martin's pace and potentially reel in those leaders. But let's take a pause for a brief moment and take a look back at what happened at the start of the race, ladies and gentlemen, and here is the replay. And well, as the drivers made the way away, this is where it all kicked off, and Ross just having a very slow start by comparison, and in the end being caught out in a free wide here down to the braking zone and having to play it quite safely as they made the way under braking. Meanwhile, further down the order, well, we did have there what was the car, one of the Corvettes getting it wrong, and car being spun around that, I believe, whereas Todd Allier came into the scene of the incident and it ended up in tears, and I'm trying to see who exactly was involved in that. We did have Baptiste Moreno a bit further down the order have a nightmare start. We saw one of our BMWs there come to a sliding halt all of a sudden. Can we get a better replay of that? Well, here is another replay of the incident. Can we get a better perspective? Yes, we can. And it was one of the Corvettes who just ran a little bit wide, collected one of the Porsches. I believe that was Sabit Veraboic who was caught up in that incident. In fact, we did see that and Montero being pulled to the pit lane as a result. And then it was curtains between all the drivers. And the Corvette in particular who was caught up there, I believe, was Ruben Lorente Jr. who ended up with that nightmare moment. And that explains the full story. But as we do come back to your live racing, indeed we can't dwell on that for too long, well, as we come back to the racing action now, Depeche on the back of what is this trio of drivers. The first up will be Rodriguez for him. Can he find a way to attack Rodriguez is going to be the question, and the answer is, well, we're going to have to wait and see as they come towards the end of lap number 5 of what is plenty more to come as they come out a left-hander and in towards that braking zone. Well, right now, all the drivers neck and neck in terms of their relative pace. I think all trying to do the balancing act here, which is they want to gain place on each other, no doubt about it, but also what they've got to be mindful of the fact is they might want to save some fuel in order to gain an upper-hand in the pit lane, as we do have a bit of a battle here between someone that's in the BMW, albeit the lead car, was that very light blue stripe through the centre, and behind our focus is on the Corvette of Argurios as he makes his way on through the bus stop chicane, can't find a way through, and Felipe Salinas getting a lovely run through there as they come across that timeline to lap number 6 they go, these two enjoying a little bit of a scrap. And remember, Salinas started P23, he was able to avoid all the carnage on the open lap, he's gained 10 places since the start, and the same for Matthias Matthew Siegel, who started P21, so there's always some winners when there's a big incident. Unfortunately, the biggest losers happen to be at Ruben Lorente Jr., who did seem to be the one who started off that domino effect after that run wide, pretty much mimicking what Ross did coming out of La Source, albeit in the end just dipping a bit too wide, putting that rear right tyre on fire, the rear left tyre on fire in terms of trying to spin it up, and in the end it all went wrong, and there were a number of drivers who got caught up in that, including Sabit Veraboic and also Juan Carlos Martin and Todd Allier subsequently and Bauti Silva. But still, on the here and now, and what's looking positive at the moment as we look a little bit further back to the drag race here between what is the Porsche of Hubert Ruber and what is Moreno as they head on down, and it is going to be Hubert Ruber who makes the move stick there, moving up into P17 ahead of Baptiste Moreau as they hammer out of Le Com and in towards Rivage Del Go, and well, the Porsche making some progress there as they come on down towards the braking zone here for the right-hander of turn number 8. But as their fight seems to subside for a brief moment, or does it, as in fact Morio is going to get a really lovely run off of the corner there, but the problem is you can't really go too wide once you commit to the corner unless your rival makes a complete nightmare of the corner, makes a ham sandwich of it, and Hubert River under pressure here as they power their way along. But is there going to be enough pressure? We ride on board the dashboard here of Morio as they come out of the left-hander of Poor. He's going to get very close here. He's going to think about the move on the RSR, and as they look to the outside, well, Moreno's going to go all in here, and will he be able to find a move? Can he go for the cutback potentially? I don't think he can. Both drivers sliding around a little bit here, and well, you could see how the Porsche of what was Hubert's Rubert just falling off of the curb, and I think the way that car's set up is quite sensitive to curbing, given the way it dropped off, and you could see the rear just letting go a little bit. Moreno, meanwhile, struggling a little bit here in what is the draft. We've got battling further up the order, but let's also stay with this battle for a little bit longer, and I think Moreno not quite getting the run he wanted to, but we know this BMW M8 is a monster on the straights, typically at most circuits. We saw that in Season 1, albeit Laguna Seca being the odd exception. The BMW seems to be exceptional at everything, and as they come out of Blanchimont Corner, Moreno not able to get close enough here to think about it on the move. The one weakness of the BMW, its brakes really are lacking compared to its rivals, and none more so than the Porsche that does have the best of the brakes out of the group of 5 cars, and that's how they're going to stay for now as they exit out of what is the bus stop chicane to go on to the next lap. A great little battle between these two as they head on to what is lap number 7 of their race. But looking at back up the order, we look to Oscar Rodriguez, who has had a bit of a battle with Sylvain Depech, and in fact Depech did look for the move into La Source. I think we're going to get a replay of that very shortly as to what happened, but they have swapped places back now. Looking further back, that's Walter Fernandez, who you can see, and behind him a little cheeky peek there from Axel Begerman with Cedric Boissier very close behind. So these three now are really running in their own pace, and it does look as though Boissier, for all intents and purposes, is playing the waiting game here of patience. Also, we've got a bit of a change going on here. That's Hand, who started last our drives, or at least on the final row of the grid. He started penultimate place, P25, trying to look around the outside of Strzezuski. And Strzezuski holding on there after Strzezuski as they come on through Lecom. And the BMW driver there making sure not to lose out was P15. So we are getting some changes in positions outside the top 10, albeit things are calming down a little inside the top 10 at the moment. And I think all the drivers at this point all thinking now about the bigger picture in this race, and that is not ending up in terms of overcooking the tyres early, because remember, in terms of that pit stop, our drivers can change tyres if they want to, but you don't normally change tyres. The tyres will normally go the distance, and instead the main thing is you need to have a quick splash and dash of fuel and get yourself back out there. But the shorter you can spend in the pit lane, you may just gain a place or two, at least some race time over your rivals. And well, speaking of gaining places here, we still do have Baptiste Murillo looking for that move on Hubert Riber as they come into the Fangio chicane, and this is pretty much deja vu from the previous lap, albeit it looks so this time Hubert Riber getting a better run out the medium speed apexes there, turns 12 and 13, and therefore not losing as much ground and not having that sideways slide. But we must come from them because it's about to stop chicane. There's contact, and that is Sylvain Depech being turned around, almost being turned around by what was Oscar Rodriguez. And well, I think there we caught what was the last 2/3 of how that played out, but we didn't catch the start of the story. But in terms of the start of the story, we can immediately cut to a replay to fill you in on the details, and here it is. So this was coming them down in towards was the bus stop chicane. Now Depech goes all in on the inside here. He's got the right to the line. There wasn't contact based on that camera angle, and in the end there was a tap to the rear left quarter panel onto the rear left wheel arch practically of Depech's car from what was Rodriguez. And Depech understandably not happy about how that happened, and well, I think he'll be grateful for the fact he's been able to get away there with a car that's still running without significant damage, because that contacts like that can be race ending potentially if they do hit the tyre square on. But meanwhile, we've got 3 wide here coming on down. Have we or have we not? And it looks like that is going to be Boissier and Wes Begerman both making the way on past. Well, in fact, yes, indeed, they do. They make the way past Walter Fernandez, who was going slowly there on what was the inside line. I wonder if Fernandez had picked up a slowdown penalty and therefore was serving it offline, and the two drivers just simply slipstreamed their way on past. And if so, that would make a lot of sense. Meanwhile, we've got more fighting going on here, as that is going to be a change of place between Strzezuski and Hand, and Strzezuski holding off Hand once again, as we've got a car rejoining that, and that is Felipe Salinas, who is rejoining after a bit of a trip to the dirt coming through Lecom, and that's going to lead to further battling here, the battle of the BMWs, Strzezuski versus Salinas, and it's going to be Strzezuski on the inside, Salinas with dirt on the tyres, goes deep, handles up the inside there, so the Ford GT sneaks its way on past, and now Alta Strzezuski is going to have to try and hold on here as we ride on board and look back from the rear of what is the number 21 in P14 of Strzezuski as they head in towards Prawn Corner. Coming on through that left-hander, and as he gradually lifts off the throttle and then reasserts it, the wonderful power of what is that twin-turbo 4.4 litre V8 engine under the M8 hood. Remember, it's front-engine rear-wheel drive, where all its rivals here are mid-engine rear-wheel drive. He goes very deep. Strzezuski gets the car stopped in time, but that completely compromises his line. And, well, there, I think that was just a driver error under the pressure, and you can understand why he might have had a little bit of a moment there. And, indeed, everyone makes moments like that, even the very best of them. And, indeed, we are in the top split here today, whereby it just goes to show you that even the best make mistakes, and Suzuki right now under a lot of pressure to try and pull away, and I think he's worked so hard in order to try and make this move happen that he may have just put a little bit of excess heat in the tyres, and that may be what is causing him to feel a bit under pressure. As here comes Hand once again. Hand in a Ford GT that's definitely got a lot of straight line speed. It doesn't quite have the performance in the corners, but Hand going all in, but he's going to have to go all in on being defensive here as Felipe Salinas looks around the outside, and it's just made to watch, and Hand is into the pits. He decides he does want to play a role in this battle and opts to get out of the battle sooner rather than later. That's an interesting tactical decision here from Hand. Perhaps he's seen something that his rivals have not, but meanwhile, speaking of things we haven't seen in ages, and this is your race leaders. We pretty much left them alone after lap number 1, and Jose Manuel Cazon versus Augustin Martin. Well, there's no change in place at the moment between these two, but one thing that is for certain is they are closing the distance from one another. The gap has come down from what's been an average of 0.6 of a second to what is on average 0.3 of a second, depending on the part of the circuit, and that's going to be a very deep run there from Cazon, and Martin almost follows him there, and it does look as though these two drivers push each other on as much as possible, but mutually trying to work together here in order not to fall back into the clutches of Ross. And one thing I can tell you, lap time wise, Michael Ross is now looking to be arguably the fastest of your top 5 drivers out there. In fact, he's the fastest man on circuit this time. He hasn't set the fastest lap of the race, but he is the fastest on outright pace, and we can give you a perspective of what is the lap time history between Ross and his P2 rival as we do bring it up on the screen. And here you go, and as you'll see, laps 4 and 5, Martin was slightly faster. Of course, we had that battling on lap number 4, but that was when Ross had got past Farina, and since then you can see Martin is struggling a little bit for lap time by comparison. Ross, meanwhile, is now stepping up the pace, and well, I think the approach that Ross is taking here is one whereby he's really focusing the car about getting the most out of it over the distance. And could we be seeing Corvette supremacy finally coming to an end, or if so, could we be seeing the potential changing of the guard at least? It's very early to tell. Of course, this is only week 1 of 12 weeks of racing in season 2, but we are definitely looking at a very different picture here today compared to what we have seen in previous weeks and indeed in previous seasons. But as he makes his way on through the corners there, coming through bus stop chicane and on to what will be the 21st minute of the race as they cross the line to complete lap number 9 and go on to 10. Well, looking back to Carlos Manzanaro, as we do see the Corvette driver here looking to put some pressure on Boisier, not close enough to do so, and therefore just having to wait. Well, one thing we've been waiting some time for is a replay of it to explain what happened to Felipe Salinas in terms of why he went off at Les Combes, and well, here is the replay from lap number 8. And this was coming on through Les Combes, and was there a bit of a slide? Yes, there was. There was a big slide on through the left-hander and ended up on the grass. Well caught, however, by Salinas to make sure to point the car to the escape road and bring it back on. Many would have had that go round, but not so for our number 18 driver, and a fantastic piece of driving there to keep it going in the right direction eventually, and very hard to do when the rear lets go like that, particularly on the bulky beast that the BMW is. But returning to your live racing pictures, we've still got half the race distance or so to go, as we've got some pit stops playing out, including for Baptiste Moridou, as he has come into the pit lane and serviced his what will be his one and only stop, we believe, albeit has been, in fact, he's been serviced still at the moment, so we'll correct ourselves there. And well, in terms of our pictures at the moment, we're looking at the battle for P9 between Boisier and Manzanaro, but I think we're going to be also seeing some further battling up the field very shortly. But we are now in the little bit of the equinox zone in terms of strategy, whereby some drivers will be opting to pit, whereas others we're looking to go as long as possible. And as we've seen in what has been previous seasons, particularly in last season, a number of drivers, particularly those inside the top 5, they won't want to pit until as late as possible because they won't want to fall backwards into battles that are out on circuit with other drivers who are just not on their pace, indeed not in their race, quote unquote. Albeit that's not to besmirch or belittle those other drivers, but drivers such as Boisier and Manzanaro are not most likely going to be able to battle with the likes of Cazon and Martin. But the problem is, of course, that if one of the leading drivers comes into the pits and comes out behind these two, they'll get caught up in the battle and they will lose race time. And that is how drivers like Ross and Farina can gain places and gain victory as a result. So that's why sometimes it's the game of who is going to reveal their hand first on strategy. But I think right now the one driver is going to reveal a move. That is going to be Delpech looking up the inside of Blanchard. Oh, there's contact between the two of them, and Rodriguez is elbowed wide, and I wouldn't be surprised if that is potentially a little bit of elbows out in comparison to what happened earlier at this corner. You can see Rodriguez is not happy about that at all, and we're not saying it's right what Delpech has done, but indeed I think they're Delpech taking the approach which is, you know what, we had what happened happened at bus stop chicane, and now we're going to have something similar happen here as they make the way in towards La Source, albeit they both survived that instant, and I get the feeling that hopefully the red mist will not fully descend on the pair of them, because if it does, it's going to be spectacular, but it's not going to be what we want to see, and hopefully it won't be quite that way, but you can definitely feel some tempers between these two. And well, you've got to understand, of course, from Sylvain Depech's perspective, at Monza in what was week 12 or 12 of season 1, he had an absolute nightmare in terms of his season finale in the Top Split broadcast, in that everything that could go wrong for Depech went wrong in the space of what was 3 laps of racing, when he was labelled as the favourite to take what was the GTE crown for season 1 of the 2025 season, given that you do have official points tables and divisions on iRacing for each of the official series, and we was on course to take the Division 1 crown, and we'll have to double check later whether he was able to do so. But meanwhile, as we do see Boise out there keeping Manzanaro behind just for now, we ride on board here with the Ford GT, well, not the Ford GT, the Corvette I should say, taking a sneaky look up the inside of the Ford GT as they came on out to Lecom and down in towards Raj Corda, and Boise under a lot of pressure now as they make the way on through. Lovely pictures there to give you an idea how close these two are getting to each other as they make the way on through the Ardennes Forest. As they come out of X Corner and down towards Puon, well, Manzanaro absolutely flashes lights here, trying to throw every little trick in the book in order to get under the skin of Boisia, and Boisia right now doing very well to resist as we go deeper and deeper into night time, and I believe this is our first nighttime broadcast as well, and it's lovely to see the headlights coming on full gloom between these drivers as they make the way on through. But as they do and start to make the way down towards the lowlands from the forest, well, right now Manzanaro, as much as he can flash his lights and do everything else, Boisia is still holding on, albeit literally by the ragged edge of adhesion. As Manzanaro comes in hot then to Stablo 1, you can see he's really trying to put that mental pressure on his rival, but the problem is, of course, the harder you drive like that, you make mistakes, such as his exit out of Stablo 1 being compromised. He's lost speed through Stablo 2, and that gap has now opened up to the best part where it's half a second, whereas it could have been a couple attempts closer by comparison, and that's the thing, it is a balancing act here. And remember, the tyres these GTEs run, they're very easy to cook, and when they are overheated, plus the fact you have no ABS on these cars, so therefore you do have to modulate the brakes yourself. If you overheat those tyres, you've then got to find a way to get them back, and that can take entire laps to do so as they head on to lap number 12 of their race. But powering their way out of the corner then and up the rise in towards the source they go. When we come from the onboard there, and Manzanaro is running in P10 back towards the leaders here as they head on towards the Kenmore Straight. You can see Ross still matching with what is Farina behind, and as they come on down, they're the top 4 all in a single pitch now. And then there's your P5 driver Sylvain Depech in the rear, followed up by Oscar Rodriguez. Lovely to see all of our top 6 in the single camera shot, and Farina right now still playing the game of working with Ross just to simply follow this race on through, and therefore I would imagine that by just simply following his rival on around here, where he's going to be under what is the impression at which is, you know, we still can gain some race time. And well, we're surprised if we see the pit stops from our top 5 play out within the next 7 minutes. We normally do see the pit stops conclude by the 33rd minute, albeit it is circuit dependent on how much fuel they're using on the circuit. And there have also been some changes recently to the inbuilt iRacing fuel calculator that's caught out some drivers earlier this week. Hopefully we don't need to see any double stops of drivers where they need to come in for a quick splash and dash of fuel at the end of the race. And indeed, I think a lot of our drivers opt in to do the own mental maths in the head, or perhaps even have notepads by their driving side in order to tell them how much fuel needs to go into the car. But once they make the way on around, meanwhile, we look a little bit further down the order. He's a couple of laps down. He's 3 laps down. But this is Todd Alia as he makes his way out of La Source, and one of a number of drivers who was involved in that open lap instant through La Source corner. It's great to see both Alia and also Willis Rodriguez at GC both out there, multiple laps down, but still wanting to complete this race. And that's the racing spirit that we love to see as he makes his way on through. Albeit at the moment, it's going to be all about what is just simply holding his head down and pushing onwards as we look back up towards the very front of the field. And well, Ross right now under increasing pressure from Farina here as they come on through up Blanchimont corner. Farina close. Does he go for it this time? Well, the gap was 2 tenths there as they made the way onto the brakes. Farina doesn't go for it this time around, but I wonder if he's now starting to think, okay, if Michael can't push on towards the leaders, or perhaps the gap's a bit too much, is there now an opportunity for me to get involved as they head across that timing line onto lap number 13. Unlucky for some is number 13, but could it be good luck for one of these two? We'll have to see as they exit the first quarter. But one thing that is definitely telling is that Augustin Martin has fallen back a little bit off of Manuel Cazon, so therefore the top 2 are now starting to split out to a gap of 1.2 seconds, and it's 1.6 seconds from Martin, who is the driver of our cameraman's Focus here, versus what is Ross. And Ross, I think right now, will just be hoping that Farina is still patient just for a little bit longer, and that way they don't fight right now. As meanwhile, in the pit lane, as I look at my Conte booth window, we've got several drivers in, including De Groot, also Strzelecki, Salinas. I believe it might be pit stop season now for a number of drivers, albeit Dirk Huberts-Ruber, who is yet to pit, is going to gain a lot of places on circuit, but he will need to pit at some point, and that will change things up. Meanwhile, looking down the Kemmel Straight once again, well, Manzanaro versus what is Cedric Boissier, and that is going to be the Corvette, and Manzanaro up the inside there, gets ahead and finally makes that move happen after trying for multiple laps, and Boissier just not having enough pace in hand to keep that Corvette behind him forever. And it does seem as though that Corvette's starting to come on strong once again as the race distance continues to push on. So the Corvette's race pace hasn't fallen away per se, it would seem so far, but still Boissier staying with his rival, and Manzanaro always pushing onwards. And now his next target will be Balta Fernandez, who's 2.5 seconds up the road, and Boissier will be hoping that he could be pulled along to his target rival as well. But looking back to two BMWs running together, it's Alta Strzelecki and Felipe Salinas. And remember, Salinas was battling a bit further up inside the top 15 until he had that off at Les Combes, and in the end, as he makes his way down here, now he's got to try and gain those places back up, but he's going to have to make his way past the fellow BMW first and foremost for P15, and Strzelecki, who has been at a couple of top split broadcasts over the course of the previous season, and we have seen him battling normally for the bottom end of the top 10, if not the first of the place inside the top 15, and as he makes his way on down here, doing very well right now to hold on to P15, and he'll be thinking that this could be what he's able to achieve. Remembering, these drivers have pitted, they have served their one and only fuel pit stop, and well, I think we've got a few more to go. As meanwhile, into the pit lane comes your top four. I think everyone's piling into the pit, and therefore this is going to be the big trigger here. Nobody wants to be out there until the last possible drop of fuel has been expended, and it looks as though everyone now into that pit lane who's yet to pit, so we could have a whole top 12 coming into the pit lane. I don't think anybody's going to be able to go any longer here given the length of the lap, or if anybody is, that is going to be some absolutely magical fuel saving for our drivers as Matthias Matthew Siegel in, and then we'll see Dirk Huberts-Ruber make his way in towards Blanchimont and shortly into the pit lane where he's got to, otherwise that car is going to be limping along on the next lap, I suspect. But as he makes his way in towards the pit lane, meanwhile next in the pit lane is your continued race leader of Jose Manuel Cazon, and as he heads out onto what is the old start-finish straight before it was shifted back to before La Source, well, Cazon right now making his way away. 1.9 seconds is the gap to Agustin Martin, and then we do have Michael Ross, what is a further 1.9 seconds back. So the gap between Martin and Ross has extended by 0.3 of a second in the pits. Now, Ross did have the faster static pit stop, but I suspect there might have been a little bit of a delta in terms of the time taken to get in and out of the pit lane, and that is where the difference has been. Roberto Farina still right behind Ross, so therefore Ross has not really gained in the pits. Manuel Cazon, interestingly, has gained in the pit lane. His pit stop was the shortest of the top 5 by the best part of 6 tenths, 11.43 seconds. We'd love to find a way to show you those pit times up on screen. We'll have to see if we can do that at some point. In fact, I think we might be able to. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, and there we go. And there are your pit times, and as you can see there, on the time and town left-hand side of your screen, we do have Manuel Cazon with the fastest of the pit times in terms of the top 5, but looking at P9 driver there, Manzanaro, 10.8 seconds static. Well, he's going to be doing quite a bit of fuel saving towards the end of the race, so he's done all that fuel saving early on, but either way, that is very impressive from the P9 driver, and that may be the golden ticket for him to chase down Balta Fernandez. We will have to wait and see. If he is able to pull that off, then that could be an achievement in its own right. But going from pit stop static times back to the racing here with 15 minutes left on the clock plus that final lap, well, all pit stops are clear now. We may see some last minute dashes to the pit lane, but it is going to be a grueling drive to the finish now as we look to Roberto Farina and jump on board. He powers his way up the gearbox there, the good old bit of American muscle chasing down the Ford EcoBoost machine as they roar their way in towards the Blanchimont corner, and you can see Farina getting much closer there on where's the exit of the fast left-hander, and will that Corvette really coming alive in the last phase of its drive, particularly in top gear compared to the Ford GT. And remember, they are allowed to change the drivetrain in terms of the gears rated speeds and also the gear gaps in terms of whether gears are for acceleration or top speed. So that does, I mean, you can really set up the car exactly how you want to in this series, and that's where you're going to see so many different approaches from car to car, even though they may be the same car or or similar cars out on circuit, the way I try to set up the cars will be very different philosophies, and those who spend all the time tinkering with the setups normally find a way to get the car to suit them. And that's the one thing that is always said to rookie drivers in the GT series: go with a car that you feel comfortable with and then gradually tinker with the way it handles and the setup on the car for your circuits that you race at, because that is where you'll get the most value out of the car and the most rewarding feeling from racing this series. As Farina here heading up towards top speed, but just lifting off there before the break-ins over Lacom. Not in the mood to fight just yet, but I get the feeling there is such a building temptation with Martin being 1.4 seconds up the road, and then a gap took us on what is 2.5 seconds now, so it looks like our race leader might have just run away at this point with this one, as they head on down for Rivage corner and coming down for the right-hander in towards the left. Well, right now, it is all about who's going to be finishing on what will be the last step of that podium, or the last 2 steps of the podium, unless Manuel Cazon has an absolute moment out there, because it looks like he's in control of this race. But Agustin Martin may not be safe in P2, and Michael Ross is definitely bringing Roberto Farina along for the ride with him, so it's going to get very dicey in the last couple of laps. But let's come a little bit further down the order, and let's come to Renzo de Groot, a newcomer to the top split as of today. And well, I can tell you one thing, absolutely looking as though right now, whilst it has been a little bit of a bumpy experience for him here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, he's looking comfortable in P17 at this time. He's had some good battles, to give credit where it's due, albeit with a stationary pit stop time of 40.75 seconds. I do wonder where a fresh set of tyres has been put on this Ferrari, and perhaps that'll be a learning experience it will take away the next time not to put the tyres on, or perhaps there's some damage that we weren't aware of that he needed to repair. Indeed, the mechanics being hard at work, but definitely putting in a good opening stint and doing some great battling with the likes of Geoffrey Argurius and also Matthias Matthew Siegel, but now in a little bit of no man's land, being chased after there by what is, I believe, the P21 Porsche of Sabit Veraboic, and well, in fact, that is not Veraboic out there. In fact, I do believe it's one of the other drivers instead, just trying to understand who that is, but either way, as he makes one for our thinking, that is Todd Allier. Well, no, Allier's a bit further back, so therefore, not quite sure who it is right behind him at the moment, but I can tell you still pushing on. Indeed, all these drivers are looking all to go for gold as best they possibly can out there, and that's always great. And in fact, I believe that's Veraboic, and in the end, his timer transponder on my screen, albeit not on your screens, ladies and gents, was incorrect. So Veraboic was the right driver there, but still, let's come from rights and wrongs and everything in between. Sometimes we get the wrong data, sometimes we get the right data, but we do come back into the running order, and to 2 drivers who are fighting each other, and that is Argurius versus Hand as they come out of what is the final quarter. And well, right now, number 26 driver, the lowest I-rating driver of all of them on the grid here today. Once he comes down to the braking zone for Losos, he could be on course for quite a significant I-rating gain, and he's going to potentially finish inside the top half of the running order. And once they come out of Losos corner, where it's going to be all now about trying to hold off Lucas Hand to the end of the race, as meanwhile, separately, we have had a bit of an incident for Antonio Montero, and we'll flash the lights there for Argurius. I think whether he knows he's on camera or is he trying to send Morse code to the car coming out the pit lane, I think that's Antonio Montero just parked up there. I'm trying to understand what's happened, but one thing we know that is happening right now, and we don't need to understand it any further, is that Hand's going to be on the right of your picture, looking to go around the outside, about on the brakes here, and he's going to go just around. Lovely move from Hand in the number 19 Ford GT to move up into P12, and Agurius trying to do everything he could in order to hold on, but in the end it wasn't enough as they come out of Lacon and down towards Garage, and that is a change of places there that may become a permanent fixture. As meanwhile, looking further back, Artur Suzuki in the BMW M8 still holding on versus what is Salinas and Felipe Salinas just watching right now and trying to find a way to go on the attack, albeit the gap 2.6 seconds in between the two of them is a lap down Porsche in what is the form there of, I believe, Jose Rodriguez GC, so therefore he finds himself between the two battling BMWs and not able to play a role. But meanwhile, we have the question of what exactly happened to Antonio Montero, and here is a replay to explain, ladies and gentlemen. As we take a look back, this was Montero making his way up the hill after leaving the pit lane. Ooh, goodness me, in the rear of the car, snapping loose there and into the tyre barrier. You could hear it let go as it made its way over the rise, transitioned from Eau Rouge to Radion, and in the end, Montero tried to get it rolling and then realised that car is going nowhere, particularly with no headlights on it, and that was his race done and dusted, and the cars had to be towed to the pits, and I believe that is going to be an unfortunate retirement for Montero, and not the way he's wanted it to be here today in Belgium. But still, 10 minutes left on the clock or thereabouts, and we do still have that final lap of racing. And back on your live pictures, well, let's come back to your race leader here, and Jose Manuel Cazon right now leading by 2.4 seconds. Gap continues to oscillate. He is the fastest driver out there since the pit stop in terms of that relative race pace. So therefore, he might just be managing the pace, might be managing the gap at the moment, and giving himself some breathing room all the way to the finish. It is going to be a tough run all the way to that checkered flag, and of course, at any moment you can make a mistake in these GT machines as he comes on down. It only takes you to put a little bit too much brake pressure on. You can trigger what is a front lockup, and that could be enough to send the car around. I can tell you one thing, my first ever experience in the GTs, an official iRacing split, and by no means am I ever going to be in a top split anytime soon, but I ended up going around at La Source in the Corvette C8R by just simply being a little bit too heavy on the brake. Had the front brakes lock up, then the rear brakes lock up afterwards, and the rears and the fronts did not unlock themselves at the same time. And well, you can imagine I went round and ended up having to hold my brakes after, what was it, 30 seconds to try to get the car pointed back in the right direction. And well, that was a mistake there. As soon as I say that, regaling stories to a story that's unfolding there, that was a big slide from Manuel Cazon as he made his way through the Belgian chicane as he comes in Stablo 1 and Stablo 2. Could that be an inside here to what would be Augustin Martin All-30? Michael Ross started to catch up. We will have to wait and see. But as our drivers make the way on through, this could be a race. It all comes down to who's going to make the least mistakes all the way to the very end. And well, that is going to make it intriguing because Ross has pulled away from Farina. Farina's last couple of laps have really taken a bit of a dive in terms of relative time to Ross. So Ross is now in a comfortable P3. He may just be able to push on a little bit more in the final 7 minutes to try and take on Martin for P2. But if Cazon starts to make more errors like what we saw only moments ago at the Belgian chicane, could we have a freeway fight for the win? Suddenly come back to life here right at the end of this race at Francorchamps. We'll have to see as they come across the timing line. A 2-minute 13.1 for Cazon, a 2-minute 13.1 for Martin. Ross, a 2:12.9. 2 tenths gain compared to the race leader, a tenth or thereabouts versus Martin. And Roberto Farina, a 2:13.1. Sylvain Depeche, a 2:12.9. So Depeche now is coming back alive in terms of pace, and that contact he had with Oscar Rodriguez earlier on, well, that definitely hasn't done anything to dampen his spirits or his pace here. So we've got a Porsche that's suddenly coming alive, and the rumours are proving true down the paddock. The Porsche does seem to have a bit more life at Spa-Francorchamps the deeper you take it into the race. So therefore, we've got a top 5 here, albeit they're quite distant at the moment, but it only takes 1 or 2 mistakes from our drivers who are in that top 5, and we could suddenly see a big battle unfold right in those closing stages. But as they head on down in towards what is the second sector lap, we look back through to G3 Alguerius, and as he heads up towards what is the Rouge Radio Complex, well, right now he's trying to chase after Hand found the move down the Kemmel Straight 6 laps ago, and in fact it was 4 laps ago now, my memory's corrected. And as they head on towards what is the Kemmel Straight this time, well, Alguerius close, but is he close enough? My gut feeling says no, he's not. But as they head up towards what is the Lake Com entrance point here, he's going to go all in the brakes as best as he can, and will absolutely mountain that curb like that nobody's business. And Agurius, I think, really on the attack now. I think he's found a bit more pace in the car. You'll notice they're turning in very early to what was turn at number 7, and the idea being worrying about the dirty air for the back of that Ford GT and unsettling the car, as we'll see Hand go a little bit deep. He does bring it back together. He turns it into a V-shape approach, which you can do at Rivage Corner, but it is very hard to bring it back together there. But he just about did in the Ford GT, but he won't be able to get away with that for too many instances, because that front left tyre will definitely feel a lot of wear as a result of that approach to the racing line. And as they come down through Buron Corner, well, right now Aguirre is close but cannot find a way in this time in the Red Bull machine, and the Ford GT in front just trying to hold on as he looks for a move. That's very close there, and that was a very what was a wishful look for a move. You can understand what he was trying to do, but I think that he might have just lulled himself into a full sense of security of being able to throw a feint. Thankfully, we did see Hand go a little bit deep. I think Hand may have seen it coming and decided to pull the car deeper into the corner as a result, but both drivers there getting away with what could have been a bit of a nightmare instant in the battle for P12. And Agurius right now, I think, will just temper things a little bit and realise, okay, I can go for it, but I can't go for it that hard. But then again, you've always got to experiment. You don't know until you try, as they say, and thankfully that didn't come off in any bad way whatsoever. And that battle could definitely rise up, as meanwhile, speaking of rising battles, we come back to the fight for P2, and with Kazan opening that lead gap back up to 2.5 seconds. Well, Ross now is within 3 tenths here of Martin coming down. Where's the Kempel Straight? Remember, Ross started today P2, had a very slow start compared to the Corvettes around him, but now he is back on the attack here as they make the way out to Lake Com and down towards Rivage Corner they go with 4 minutes left. They'll have this lap plus at least one more before they see that checkered flag, and will the laps being accrued at the rate they are right now, can Agustin Martin hold on to what would be a second place finish and a brilliant race given he started P4, or is he going to find himself being swallowed up by the Ford GT of Michael Ross right at the end? Well, we will see as they come down through Pearl Corner for the 19th time, and as they do, we'll no change between them. At this point, you won't expect to see too much because these drivers will absolutely nail it in this middle sector, and it'll be in what is the last sector and the first sector. That will be where all the big gains and changes can potentially happen at this time, unless there's a major mistake from either one of them here in the middle sector, but not this time around whatsoever. But through Stavlon 1 they go then, and onwards up towards what will be Blanche when they charge. They come out of Stablo 2, and what a better run there from Martin. And the gap opening up by what was a 10.5 to Ross, and Martin there just absolutely nailing the exit, and Ross right now huffing and puffing and hustling on that Ford as much as he can, but you can see that Ford is just falling a little bit further back into the distance initially, then it will start to gain back in terms of the slipstream. The gap closing up there by 1.5 tenths. They make the way on through, but no, it changed at the moment. Meanwhile, that's a rejoin in Cedric Boissier, and that is going to be a move for the Ferrari of Matthias Matthew Siegel, moving up into P10, also known as Massey in the official GT Discord in short, and as he makes his way out of what is Stablo 2 right now, that is a place gain, and one he's not going to look to let go any time soon. But how did he make the move happen, or how did Boissier go off the circuit is perhaps the question we need to answer, and here is the replay to explain. And it was coming down into the Fangers chicane. Boise on the brakes. Oh, goodness me, rear of the car, just letting go there a little bit too adventurous. And then catching the car in time into the gravel trap. And well, great awareness there from Siegel just to simply stay nice and tight and round to the outside in order to take the place and not end up in a full-up altercation. But we come back to your live pictures, and we do here on what could be the penultimate lap. That is going to be Ross on the inside of Martin down the Kemmel Straight. Will it be straightforward here for the Ford GT driver? And the answer is yes, it is. And Ross is up into P2, at least for now. But can Martin come back at him here as they make the way on around? We jump on board with the Corvette C8 drivers. They come down towards Rivage Corner. This is the fight for the second spot on the podium with what is a 2-second gap to Farina in P4. It doesn't look as though Farina's going to be getting involved here at any time soon as they head in towards what will be X Corner. Ross is already started to pull away. You can see, look at the body language that Ford compared to Martin's Corvette. You can see in the motions of the steering wheel there in the bottom left of your left corner of your picture, in the fact Martin just not quite happy with how the car's feeling right now. I think the tyres may have hit a limit, and Martin as a result losing out now. I don't think Ross is going to be able to take the win in this race unless we have a huge moment for Kazan, who is 2.7 seconds up the road, so therefore it might be the Ross that's to settle for second. But what a way to get back to his starting position in this race. I think he'll be pretty happy with that. But meanwhile, talking about place changes, we could have one coming here between Argurius and Strzezuski, and well, Argurius having to go defensive here after hand passed him earlier on, and Strzezuski all over the back of the Corvette driver as they gradually, gingerly make their way on down for Rivage Corner. And in towards the left-hand at X they go with 30 seconds left on the clock. We will get one more lap after this because our leaders have cleared Blanchimont going into the bus stop chicane. So therefore we will get 21 laps completed here at Spa-Francorchamps, not 20. But right now Strzezuski just waiting for an opportunity to go on the offensive as we jump on board here with the BMW M8. Now he heads up towards another gear, looking up to the inside, goes for it there, but Indian can't quite get close enough. Utter Strzezuski being bold, trying to be brave, but he can't find a way in this time as he chases after the number 26. And Strzezuski trying to get himself into the top 13 here to get himself into the upper half of the running order. Albeit Agurish just trying to hold on for what will be this lap plus one more as the clock ticks over 45 minutes. We've got one more lap after this one then, most certainly for these drivers, albeit our leaders already on to that final lap. And as they power their way along, can Strzezuski get close up here coming into Blanchimont to think about a move into the bus stop chicane? Well, the gap is currently 2 tenths. If he's going to think about it, he will go all in this battle for P13. Now it's 1.5 tenths here. He could go from the brakes. He's going to look all in. It's going to be close. And Argurius gives the space there to Strzezuski. Strzezuski looks at the cutback, and in the end, Argurius very sensibly just parks the car on the apex and says, I'm going to drag myself through this corner. I'm not going to put the throttle down and open up a door for you to sneak back in. Into La Source they go. Strzezuski thinks about about it, throws the dummy. Meanwhile, Arguris does not fall for it, and Suzuki tucks back in. It's brilliant back and forth racing between these two, and as they come out of the corner, Suzuki just made to wait a little bit longer, gets a poor run off a La Source, and that is going to cost him all the momentum now, all the way down the Kemmel straight in towards Lancôme. Will stay with this battle as the sparks fly there from the under tray of the BMW M8, and as they power their way along, can he find a way in? The gap coming onto the Kemmel straight, 2 attempts. Can he be close up there? As you can see, Arguris going defensive, weaving side by side, and that is not impressing Suzuki. Suzuki's going up the inside there, flashing the lights, he's going to go on the brakes, he's going to get close. Arguris goes deep, he's going to go straight on, returns to the circuit, and Suzuki being made to back off there. I think deciding to back off for safety, and well, I think he'll be a little bit frustrated at that one, but brilliant racing between the two of them. But Arguris pushing it to the limit in terms of trying to hold on to this position all the way to the end, and Suzuki's not going to have too many more chances now, as it does look as though Arguris really struggling for tyre life and pace right at the end. But as they make the way through each corner, let's come back to your race leader, ladies and gentlemen, because after he put it on pole position by only 200, well, it's been fine margins today, and for Jose Manuel Cazon, those fine margins will translate into victory as he reaches and takes the checker flag here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps as your winner for Week 1's Top Split broadcast. Michael Ross takes P2 in the Ford GT and will be sandwiched by Corvettes, with Agustin Martin completing the overall podium. Roberto Farina comes home P4 ahead of Sylvain Depeche in an absolutely battling and belligerent P5. Oscar Rodriguez takes P6, and then it will be Axel Bergerman who comes on through to take P7 after his brilliant fight from the bottom end of the top 10. Walter Fernandez takes P8 ahead of Carlos Manzanara, who just missed out on the line, and then it will be a further 15 seconds back, and I think right now just getting to the end to hold on to a top 10 finish. It is going to be Cedric Boissier, so 2 Fords inside the top 10 here at Spa-Francorchamps. A great achievement from Boissier, given the struggles he's had over the race distance. Matthias Matthew Siegel in the end finishing at P11 after a P21 start. What a drive. And the same there for Lucas Hand, who takes P12, having started P25 on the grid. But meanwhile, what's happening here? Suzuki's going to out-drag Arguris to the line, and he will take P13 on the line in a drag race out the final quarter versus G3 Arguris. And then it will be Felipe Salinas, who will be finishing P15 ahead of Dirk Hubert's Rubu, who takes P16, and then we will have Renzo de Groot, who finishes your lead lap finish as P17, and we've still got a couple of drives to finish this race over the distance, I do believe, ladies and gentlemen, and what, a number of them are laps down, but let's not forget about them, and let's see them all the way to the finish here, including none other than what is Todd Alia. We have just had, I believe, Sabit Verhebovic cross the line and take what is P20, so therefore he's finished his race, a difficult race to stomach given what happened on the open lap, but still not indicative of what he could have done today, and we're a little bit upset to not see him have that fight inside the top 10, but I'm sure we will later this season see plenty more fighting from him. And well, our last finish of this race is going to be, in terms of drivers yet to get to their checker flag, will be Todd Alia as he makes his way in towards Blancheville corner, and well, you can understand it's not the way he's wanted it to go whatsoever today, in the fact an open lap where just one car in front of him getting it all wrong caused the domino effect and saw 7 drivers have to very quickly tow to the pit lane. But it's great to see him get out there, embody the GT spirit, that endurance spirit, which is, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish, and in the end he takes P19, albeit 3 laps down. But what a round of racing, ladies and gentlemen. We couldn't have asked for a more electrifying start to what is Season 2 here in the official GTE Sprint Series on iRacing, and here are your results subject to any stewards' inquiries from the iRacing officials. And as we can see, in the end it was none other than Jose Manuel Cazon who took victory overall in the Corvette C8R ahead of Michael Ross in the Ford GT, and then a fellow Corvette on the podium there of Agustin Martin to complete your podium finishers. Roberto Farina kept Michael Ross honest all the way through the race, but in the end, towards the end, lost out a little bit on the pace and finished P4 ahead of Sylvain Depeche, the leading Porsche driver there, were P5 drive, which saw him have to get his elbows out, none more so than versus XPD and Amiral Racing's Oscar Rodriguez. But I think their fight in the end, they'll talk about it afterwards, and I think they'll calm down, but a little bit of red mist between the two of them. But it wouldn't be excited if there wasn't a little bit of red mist, and well, they kept it relatively clean or thereabouts. Oscar Rodriguez P6 ahead of Axel Bergerman P7, and he enjoyed a great fight with Walter Fernandez, Carlos Manzanara and Cedric Boissier, who completed your top 10. Behind the Cube Racing driver Matthias Matthew Siegel, best to rest P11. In the leading Ferrari, with Lucas Handfish in P12 after a P25 start. What a climb from him in the number 19. Artur Suzuki at P13 there, the leading BMW driver, who just managed to outrace Argurius to the line. GT3 Argurius there, P14. And then we did see Felipe Salinas, P15 ahead of Dirk Hubert-Ruber, the WS Racing esports driver there, being one of your last lead lap finishers. And the very last of them being Renzo De Groot, who finished P17 there in a challenging race in the Ferrari. Given it started well, but it all went backwards at the midpoint. We also did have some finishers, not in the lead lap, but what was a number of laps down. 3 laps down to both what was there, Jose Rodriguez GC and also Todd Alia. And we also saw 8 laps down to Sabet Verhelboik, but very happy to see all 3 of them finish the race there despite how it started. And that was your top 20. Outside the top 20, Baptiste Moreau ahead of Jens Lochel, Antonio Montero, Juan Martin. And then we also did see there Juan Carlos Martin, I should say. And we also had Ruben Lorente Jr. and Bautista Silva completing your finishers. But, of course, a number of them be non-finishers, given they did not complete the race distance or finish within a number of laps of the race winner. They had to retire early with that overlap instant. So 26 starters and in the end 25 classified finishers, of which we saw 17 on the lead lap. But with that, ladies and gents, let's definitely set the tone for what has been the start of Season 2. And, well, have we been able to draw any key insights from today? Well, one thing's for certain is that if Michael Ross is on the grid, we can expect that Ford GT to be challenging for the podium, if not the outright win, and our Mr. Ford definitely demonstrating it. But we have seen some chinks in the armour of the Corvette, and the fact that over the race distance, perhaps not looking as secure as it has in the past, and the Porsches are looking a little bit more comfortable as the race distance has gone on. So, therefore, this could be a season where we might start to see the Corvette lose its crown as the king of GTEs. But of course, we will bring you that story as it unfolds over the 12 weeks. But with that, of course, we completed all of that action here today in Belgium at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, and that leaves us to next time, because we will travel to the United States of America in a week's time for the Daytona International Speedway. And, well, it will be a thriller. There's nothing quite like a race at Daytona, that I can assure you. And for all the week 2 action, we will be at circuit side in our regular 1900 GMT or UTC slot for all the action on Friday, the 28th of March 2025. Be there to see it live as it unfolds. But until then, thank you very much for tuning in. We have been the GTE Sprint Series official series on iRacing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, have a fantastic weekend ahead, ladies and gentlemen. And most importantly, as always, remember to stay on track. Good night.